Hi folks, welcome to my video here titled Titanic Never Sank. Now, initially I had 2 volumes of this Titanic sinking up on YouTube, Titanic The Great Deception and Volume 1 and Volume 2. However, I've had the misfortune of had my channel taken down and them 2 videos are gone. But luckily I had a copy. Now what I can tell you is when you examine cases like this, you tend to do the same as detectives do with a murder inquiry. You come up with clues now and again that were missed before. And that's what I am going to show you here. New evidence that hasn't been shown before. Now, what I can tell you is here we'll incorporate the 3 videos that I was going to put up all into one. And I'll show you the evidence I discovered as I went along. And you're going to see some very, very convincing evidence that the ships were switched. And there are people out here that are paid to make videos to debunk any such suggestion. They're paid. Who by? One can only assume maybe relatives of the White Star Line company, or maybe somebody working for MI6 trying to protect the integrity of the British government, because there is evidence they were involved. Now just remember, when you hear deliberate lies, you know you're on the path of the truth. Somebody is trying to change your mind. Now, we'll play this video as I had it prior to, and I'll add on as I go along the new discoveries I have made. Now folks, another thing I'd like to add here, I'm now 81 years of age, I'm coming to the end of my life. What I'd like to say is, don't worry about copyright. Every one of you have got my full permission. You can download this video and you can put it up as your own if you want to. Because as far as I'm concerned, the truth should not be suppressed. It should be available to everyone. So have no fears about any copyright. You've got my full permission to download it and upload it as your own. Okay folks, so let's get on with the show. From here on now is how the video was prior to this new edited version. Let's get on with the show. Hi there folks, welcome to my video, The Great Titanic Deception. I'm your host, William Swithin, otherwise known on YouTube as the Brilliant Expat Taffy. Now, I'm a retiree of 79 years of age from the UK, residing in the beautiful, friendly, cheap, dirt cheap country of Thailand. Okay folks, let me say now, over the last 10-12 years, my main interest on YouTube has been debunking NASA's fraudulent moon landing claims. And I got very engrossed in that. It was taking up a hell of a lot of my time, I can tell you. I did get up to 260 videos that proved NASA faked the moon landings. And let me tell you, I made a lot of enemies putting those videos out. However, coming to this video showing this Titanic switch, let me say, I do remember seeing that a few years ago, maybe about 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, but I only just watched it and never give it any more thought because I was too engrossed in these fake moon landing videos. However, in my latter years now, I'm slowing down a bit due to my age, 79. And a few weeks ago, up comes this video again about the Titanic being switched. And this time I watched it and I took more notice of the content. And there's one part of that video that really spiked my enthusiasm to take a greater interest in this video. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
A conspiracy of monumental proportions.
The starboard propeller is going to have to be replaced, and the crankshaft is damaged. There's a crack between the arm and the shaft. But worse, the keel is bent. That's going to give her a permanent list to port, and there's no way we can correct that. We're going to have to cut the ship in half, insert a new frame, and then put it all back together again. The job is going to take months, and frankly, for what it's going to cost, I think it's simply a waste of time.
Can you not just patch her up until Titanic is ready?
Well, we could put in a bulkhead to strengthen her. But to be honest, sir, she will never pass another Board of Trade inspection.
Did you hear that, folks? She'll never pass another Board of Trade inspection. Now, it also states regarding this Olympic it carried on for another 25 years. It's supposed to have carried troops in the war, and it went through a refit after the war and carried passengers again. Now, what I'd like to ask you all, if that could never be given a Board of Trade certificate, how on earth can it carry on for another 25 years? Now, in the 90s, I had a sailing yacht for 10 years, and every time I wanted to insure it, I had to get a marine inspector's report that the boat was seaworthy. So how on earth could they claim this damaged Olympic carried on for another 25 years? Now, there's only two ways that could happen. One is cash, backhanders, bribe the marine inspectors to make out fraudulent safety certificates, or swap in the ship, as they said in this video. Swap in the ship. The ship that carried on for another 25 years was the Titanic. Now, that's what made me think, hey, this video deserves a lot more research. And that's what I've done. Now, folks, that question, how could the Olympic carry on for another 25 years? I put that in the comments on the video regarding the switch. And one poster replied with, it wasn't as badly damaged as they first thought. You see what I mean? Here's a guy most probably middle-aged. He wasn't born at the time. And he claims to know more about the construction of the ship than the engineers who designed and constructed it. It's when I see stupid comments like that, that's what boosts my enthusiasm to look into the matter. Now, folks, one thing I've mentioned for years now is my motto: a good general never goes into battle without the ammunition to win it. So that's what I started doing with this video. I started building up my ammunition. What I done, I watched as many videos as I could regarding this Titanic disaster. I downloaded them. I took screenshots of photos of different ships. I really collected a lot of ammunition ready for this video. Now, folks, the first question is, where do we start? Now let me ask you all, how many of you heard of the great Irish comedian Dave Allen? Fantastic entertainer. Now one thing Dave always says, if you ask an Irishman, where do you start? He'll tell you, at the beginning. Well, that's not going to be the case with me here, because I am going to skip forward a few months. I'm not going to start at the beginning, I'm going to start a few steps along the ladder. And I'm going to start with this photo coming up here. Okay, folks, what we've got here is a ship that's claimed to be the Olympic in New York. Now, the date on this is 1911. Now, this is the ship I'm going to start off with first for very good reasons. Now, folks, as I said earlier in the video, all we've got to do to decide if these liners were switched is find a way to positively identify each ship. And there will be no mistake. I'm going to show you my discoveries, which will enable you to immediately look at one of these and say straight away what it is. Whether it's the Titanic or the Olympic. And what I'm going to show you is mass fraud going on here with these ships, as you will see. Now, I've picked this one for America, for New York, because it's got to be the Olympic, because Titanic never got to New York. And it's got the name on it, and it's got a very important clue, as I will be showing you. Okay, folks, here it is again, that ship in New York. And as I've printed on it, okay, how do we know that this ship is the Olympic? Like I said, it's the only one that got to New York. It's got the name Olympic on it. And in the description down below, it states it's 1911 in New York. Okay, folks, now, are we all in agreement with that? No arguing, no disputing. That is Olympic in New York. Now, what I'm going to do now is show you my preferred identification mark for this ship, so there'll be no disputing as to what ship we are looking at. Take a look at the cropping coming up. Here you are, folks. First step, I've cropped the bow of that ship that's in New York. And as you can see here, I printed it for you. You zoom it up and you can see the word Olympic. So this is correct. This is Olympic. No mistaking about it. Okay, we are now coming to the very important evidence that these two ships were switched and the people that lost their lives were murdered. Now let's study the bow of this ship here. The important piece of evidence I'm going to show you is in these porthole windows along the bow. Now, for very special reason, I've numbered them from right to left. We're doing a bit of Chinese counting here, backwards. Look at the top, they're in blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And then come down underneath in yellow, we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There you are. Now that's the first thing to notice with Olympic. There were 15 portholes on the deck, on the bow. Okay? 15. Keep that in mind. Now, what I want you to notice now is count along until you come to 8, and then look at 9, and look at the small gap. They're close together. The gap between 8 and 9 is smaller than the gap between 7 and 8, and smaller than the gap between 9 and 10. Very important. There's my fingerprint. It's going to prove that the victims of this tragedy were murdered. 8 and 9. Okay, folks, what we've got here is another photo of the Olympic. And this time they've got the name correct. And going all around the ship, just under the name, you can see there's a band going round. Now, this is black and white, but if it was a colour, that would be an orange band going all around the ship. The name is correct. Now count the number of portholes from the right, like I told you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are close together. There you are, more proof that 8 and 9 close together is the Olympic. Okay, here's that ship again now. Genuine Olympic. I've numbered the portholes from right to left up until 8 and 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and as you notice, 8, 9 are closer together. 8, 9, the distance between 8 and 9 is smaller than the distance between 7 and 8. Now that is our positive identification for Olympic. Now folks, just remember another important thing to remember. All these ships, once they are completed in the yard, they should have their name on it, and that name should be on every photo after. That's what you've got with Cunard, that's what you've got with all the German ships. Once the name is put on, the name is on there all the time. But amazingly enough, around this time, 1911, 1912, around about that time when this switch is supposed to have taken place, for some reason, the majority of photos of these two ships, the name is removed. Now, an old saying of mine is, everything is done for a reason and everything is done for a purpose. Nobody does something for nothing. So, who can give me an explanation why they would want to remove the names from the ships? Unless it's to hide their true identity. Okay, folks. We'll now take a look at some real evidence of the switch. Look at this photo here. At the bottom it states departure of the Titanic. But is it Titanic? Now, if you examine the portholes on this one, counting from the bow backwards to right to left, you'll see we've got the 8 and 9 close together. This is Olympic, not Titanic, although they've got the name Titanic on it. Let me give you a bigger cropping of it. Okay, folks, here's a cropping from that ship that's supposed to be Titanic on its maiden voyage. As you can see here, we've got the porthole arrangement of Olympic. Remember what I showed you? Small gap between 8 and 9 porthole when counting from the right. And notice it's got the name Titanic on it. Now, watch for the next photo coming up. Okay, folks, I combined two photos here now. On the bottom is the one I showed you earlier, which is supposed to be Olympic arriving in New York, and you can see on the ship is plenty of passengers, and it bears the name Olympic. Genuine. But the top photo is a cropping of the one I just showed you, supposed to be Titanic on its maiden voyage. It's got exactly the same porthole arrangement. And this time, with this one, it's got the name Titanic on it. The switch has occurred. They've now erased the name Olympic from the top one and replaced it with Titanic. The switch has happened. Notice where I've got 8 and 9 portholes encircled in red. Whenever you see 8 and 9 close together, that is Olympic, folks. There's the proof of the switch, and more coming up. And here it is, folks, that patched up, damaged ship Olympic, which is showing its 3-degree blister port, which the management of Harland and Wolff stated it would have, and that there was nothing they could do about it. And it's now got a new name. It's not called the Olympic here, it's called the Titanic. And it's not heading to its maiden voyage, it's heading to its final destination, the seabed at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean. Now folks, regarding that blister port on that ship, there is another YouTuber who claims to have an answer for all the anomalies regarding this Titanic disaster. What he states was there was a fire on the ship, and in their endeavour to put it out, the crew shoveled the coal from the fireside over to the other side, and that tilted the ship over, extra weight on the one side. Now, I'm going to prove to you that that man is a liar. He shouldn't be allowed to put videos on YouTube, because, as you have seen, the management of Harland and Wolff stated it would have a blister port 1 month before the fire occurred in the ship. So who do you believe? A youngster today who wasn't born at the time? Or do you believe the engineers who designed and built the ship? Who do you believe? I know who I believe. Okay folks, here's that ship again. Pack of lies. This is not the Titanic, it is the Olympic. Note the list port. Please excuse me for my little typing error in the green print at the bottom. IF, if it should be of. Irrefutable evidence of the switch. Watch for the crop section coming up. Now folks, what I'm going to prove to you all now is that that ship you just seen there is not the Titanic on her maiden voyage. It's been swapped for the Olympic, and that ship there is Olympic. And I'm also going to prove to you that that YouTuber with his video saying that the tilt is due to the fire, I'm going to show you he's a liar. Watch for the photo coming back. Okay folks, here's a crop section of that liner Olympic. Let me reveal some facts about you to prove that it is Olympic and not Titanic as they got on the bow. Here you are folks. Remember how I showed you how to recognize Olympic? Here's what we've got here. 15 portholes, as I showed you with Olympic, and the gap between 8 and 9 is smaller than the rest of them. That's reading the numbers from right to left. The gap between 8 and 9 is smaller than all the rest. That's common with every Olympic photo, folks. It's not the Titanic. Okay, folks, take a look at this ship here now. This is claimed to be Olympic. And as you can see, there's plenty of passengers on it. Now, it could be arriving in New York, or it could be leaving New York. But it's got loads of passengers on it. But let's take another closer look at it, shall we? Okay, folks. What I've done is cropped the bow of that ship here. Now, one must ask, what happened to the name on it if this is the Olympic? Why remove it? It is the Olympic because, as you can see, it's the Olympic pattern portals, and it's 15 portals, and it's 8 and 9 is close together, closer than 7 to 8 and closer than 9 to 10. It's definitely the Olympic, so why remove the name? Okay folks, take a look at this ship here now. This is one that's claimed to be Titanic, the first launch of Titanic. I can assure you it's fake. It is Olympic, as you will now see. Here you are. I've done the usual. I've cropped the front bow of that ship. And you can see distinctly it's got the name Titanic on it. But it is fake because this is Olympic. As I've shown you, 15 portholes and 8 and 9 close together. 8 and 9, the gap between 8 and 9 is less than between 9 and 10 and 7 and 8. And here's a photo I screen saved from another YouTuber's video where he claims he can see the burn area on this ship here, the Olympic. Okay folks, that concludes the first part of this video, Titanic, the Great Deception, positive identification of Olympic. Now, anybody doubt what I've shown you so far? Now just remember, don't forget it. Olympic, 15 portals, 8 and 9, a small gap. And another important thing about Olympic, the pattern and the number of portals do not change any time at all throughout the entire life of these ships. It is the same in every Olympic. Okay? No change, no additional portals, which is not the case with Titanic, as you will see coming up. Okay, folks, for this section, what we'll do now is take the advice of the great Irish comedian Dave Allen, who states, if you ask an Irishman, where do you start? He'll tell you, at the beginning. So that's what we're going to do here now, start at the beginning. Take a look at the photo coming up. Okay folks, welcome to the Great Titanic Deception, Part 2, Positive Identification of Titanic. Okay folks, here we are at the beginning. This is Titanic under construction at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. And it's even got Titanic painted on the side. Okay folks, what I've done for you here now is what I always do. Crop the important area, enlarge it to give you a better view. Now, do you remember in identifying Olympic, the key figures or the key numbers was 8 and 9 in the portholes. 8 and 9 close together in Olympic. Now, we've got nearly the same here. We've got 8 and 9, there's the identification in Titanic. The only difference is they are further apart. The gap between 8 and 9 in Titanic is greater than the gaps either side. But it's still 8 and 9 is giving us the positive identification, as you will see with other photos coming up. Okay folks, what we've got here now is Titanic near completion. The number of portholes is 14. Now remember, it was 15 with Olympic. That is 14 prior to the switch. The switch hadn't taken place yet. I'll show you when the switch takes place. But what we're going to do is count these portholes now from the left to the right. We're always going to be counting from the front of the ship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now look at 8, 9 on Titanic. Remember, 8, 9 on Olympic was close together. On Titanic, they are further apart. They are the biggest gap there. 8 and 9 is a bigger gap on Titanic. That's Titanic's layout, which you'll see time after time. Now there's how to instantly recognize which ship we were talking about. When you've got 8 and 9 is a bigger gap, it's Titanic. When it's a very close gap, it's Olympic. And more of that coming up. Okay, folks, take a look at this ship here now. Any of you tell me which one it is? Is it Olympic or is it Titanic? Okay, folks, this ship, is it Olympic or is it Titanic? Okay, remember what I showed you? The gap between 8 and 9 is greater, hence this is Titanic. But Titanic with a difference. The switch has now taken place, folks. Note the extra portholes on the right. We now have 16 for Titanic. Okay, folks, look what I've done for you here now. I've got two photos of Titanic, the bow and the portholes. Both Titanic. The top one you see, it's showing it's a Titanic but no name. The bottom one has got no name. So why? Why no name on the ship? Now the next clue along is the first arrow, when you move to the right, is pointing to portal number 9 in the top and the corresponding one, portal number 9 in the bottom. Now remember what I said? Positive identification for Titanic is the distance between portals 8 and 9 is greater than that between 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, which is what you've got here in both photos. Now, the far right arrows, top shows porthole number 14, the last one. Remember what I showed you? Titanic had 14 portholes, but in the bottom, we've got extra ones added. It's now got 2 doubles. All it is one by the side of each neighbouring porthole to make it look like a double. Actually, it's showing 16 portholes in the bottom. Notice how I've dubbed these close together ones as doubles. Okay, now from this place, from this photo on, every time you see Titanic, it will have these doubles. So that's another positive identification, is doubles. You will not find these doubles on Olympic anyway, only Titanic. That's an important clue to what ship we are talking about. Okay, folks. Now, regarding these extra added portholes, we've got to have a little discussion about these before we move on. What we've got is 2 viewers who are pretty much confused about these extra portholes. Let me show you their comments. Okay, folks, take a look at this comment here by a Nicholas Newman 4 months ago. Close but no cigar. These portholes 14 and 16 aren't portholes. They are fairleads for mooring and rope feeding. Now, what we've got here, folks, is a bird's eye view of the top of the foredeck for Titanic and Olympic. Now, this deck at the top is above the cabins below. Look around the edge of these decks. You cannot see any of those portholes. So this guy that's claiming they are fairleads for ropes is talking nonsense, because as you can see, all the cleats on the edge of the ship for taking the rope be they fixed ones or revolving ones, they're on top of the deck. So that's where the rope comes. And they go from these fixed or free rotating cleats to the capstans in the middle of the deck. Now, if he claims they are fair leads for ropes, that rope would have to go in through that hole into the cabin below, then up through the floor to get to the capstans. You can see he's talking nonsense. They are not fair leads for ropes at all. You will not find one of them windows in any ship that shows a rope going into them. And here you are. Here's a comment from another poster. Very strange name, insert name here. He's another one who thinks these portholes, these additional portholes, are fair leads. Impossible. They are not. Okay, folks. Now we've cleared up the confusion about these portholes being fair leads. Let's have a good think about these portholes. I remember one video I watched, and what they claimed was these portholes are windows for cabins under the top deck. They are crew cabins. And what I read was members of the crew in one cabin complained that there wasn't enough light coming in through the window, through the porthole. So what they done was they cut another porthole out. So that cabin had two portholes. Now I find that strange. What about all the other cabins? The other portholes? How come they were providing enough light? And another thing to think about. The ones I've just shown you are on the port side. So what about the starboard side? Oh, well, the crew in one cabin there must have complained just the same, because you've got the double portholes on the starboard side. Another thing is, what about Olympic? Launched a month or so before Titanic. Did any of them complain about lack of light? Because there's no double portholes on Olympic. Another thing is, what about in the middle of the night, 12 o'clock? These cabin crews in those cabins, there's no light coming in the windows, is there? The portholes. So they must have had interior light. So if during the day they were moaning about not enough light coming through the porthole, why not flick the switch and have the interior light on? It doesn't make sense. I've got my own views on these additional portholes, and that is, they're not portholes at all. They are fake. They are a means of deception, fooling the public into thinking that this ship is not Titanic because it's got extra portholes. Remember what I showed you? Olympic had 15. This has got 16 now. And another thing is, I think they were either just painted on, because just remember, they only had a Saturday and a Sunday. As the management said, we got to get the job done before the workers come in on Monday morning. So they didn't have much time to do it. How long would it take them to cut out 4 portholes and fit 4 new windows in there? It would take quite a while. So my first thought was, are they just painted on to deceive everybody into disguising the ship? And I'll give you my reasons for thinking that. Now, look at the photos coming up. Now, look at this short clip here, folks. It's from the history of RMS Olympic. But this ship here is not Olympic. As I've shown you earlier on, this one has got double portholes, and they were never added to Olympic. Now let me give you a closer look at these portholes here and see what you think. Okay, study these portals carefully now. Let's take a look at number 10. I marked as number 10, which would have been the portal on the side of Titanic. Just look at the depth down. You can see the bottom of the portal, the glass. You can see the thickness of the hull of the ship. And look at 3 o'clock. You've got a vertical straight line down, which is the glass inside. Next thing, look at the shadow in the portal between 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock. That's where the shadow is of this portal. Now, go to portal 12. You've got the same there. You can see the thickness of the ship, the wall of the ship, the depth of the portal. You've got the shadow, 12 o'clock till 2, same as in 10. And you've got a straight line down at 3 o'clock that side. Genuine portal. But look at number 11. The shadow at the top is the wrong position. It's sort of 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. There is no depth of portal. You can't see the bottom. It's all on the same plane. Oh. Anyone tell me that you think this number 11 looks exactly the same as number 12 or number 10? To me, it doesn't look the same. It looks like a fake porthole. Number 11 is a fake porthole, as far as I'm concerned. Let's have your views on it. Okay, folks. Now, let's have a little recap on what I have shown you so far. You will have to remember it for the photos coming up. Just remember, Olympic, 15 portholes, and they never change. And the gap between 8 and 9 is very small. Okay? And that's the same for every Olympic. Now, for Titanic, as I showed you, initially, from the yard where it was built, 14 portholes. But the gap between 8 and 9, and remember we're always counting from the front of the ship back, the gap between 8 and 9 on Titanic is greater than the gaps either side, 7 to 8 or 9 to 10. Now folks, as I said earlier on, the reason for this remake or edited version of my original video is to clear up uncertainties and to produce more irrefutable, cannot be debunked evidence that the ships were switched. But before I carry on, let me give you one guy here. Take a look at this guy here. He's the biggest critic of my earlier video. Let's see what he's got to say. Look at his name. You can pause the video if you want to read his comments, folks. Now, folks, as I just said, this guy, C.M. Stevens, is the biggest critic on my original video, Titanic, the Great Deception. I'm familiar with guys like this. It's pretty obvious from his comments what he is a paid shill. He's paid by somebody to try and disprove or dispute any evidence that there was a switch with the liners. I'm familiar with them. You've got them exactly the same with Apollo moon landings. Did you know that NASA pays shills $1,034 a month to dispute any evidence put forward by anybody else that they faked the moon landings? And we've got the same here. This guy is being paid to protect the integrity of the murderers, the fraudsters, and the crooks that carried out this despicable act. Who he's working for? I'm sorry, I can't say. It may be the British government. Somebody try and protect the British government, because it was claimed that they were involved. But I leave you some of his comments, and you can see from his comments that he is a paid shill. Now folks, all of you remember here now, the weekend prior to the sailing of the disaster ship, Titanic was completed, but Titanic and Olympic both had their names removed from the bow. Now, as far as Olympic is concerned, there are plenty of photos because it was sailing to New York or France or other places. Plenty of photos available. But there was not plenty of photos available for Titanic. Now, I did read that the weekend after Titanic was completed, nobody was allowed on the ship. No viewers, no reporters, nobody. So, there's a lack of photos regarding Titanic. However, just remember, when the visitors or the sailors, people boarded Titanic, or supposed to be boarded Titanic, they boarded on the port side. Everybody could see the ship. They could all take photos, as many photos as they want. But they couldn't see the other side of the ship. They couldn't see the starboard side. That's why we never had many photos of the starboard side. However, I can find you one photo showing the starboard side, and it's the only one I could find. And it's got something suspicious about it. Let me show you the photo. Okay folks, take a look at this photo here now. We've got both ships here, Titanic and Olympic, together. Now it's been suggested that this is the point where they had them both close together to swap over items to disguise the ships. Now, are you able to tell me which is which? Just looking at the two of them together? Well, I can tell you which is which, and I'll show you now in the next photo. Okay folks, the ship on the left, the two identifying marks are 1, the porthole arrangement, and 2, the portside wheelhouse, what looks like a little cabin up by the blue arrow. Now, look at the blue arrow coming down, that's the edge of the wheelhouse, and look at the yellow arrow going up, that's the next deck down the corner, and they're both in line. There is no overhanging of the wheelhouse, starboard side. And as for the portholes, you can see it's got the Olympic pattern portholes. 15 portholes and 8 to 9 close together. This is definitely Olympic, folks. Okay folks, proof of what I just said about the porthole arrangement. Here is a ship they can't argue with. It's got passengers on it. It's docked at New York. This is Olympic, and look at the starboard side. It's got 15 portholes and 8 to 9 are close together. Same as the one we just shown. So that one we just shown is definitely Olympic. Okay folks, hope I've made it clear there. We've now identified which of them two ships is Olympic. We'll now take a look at the other ship and see if we can positively identify it as Titanic. Now, one thing special about this photo coming up that's supposed to be Titanic is it was me who first started using porthole arrangement and numbers as a means of identifying the two ships, as you've seen from my previous video. But I'm not claiming the reward for being the first to do that, because I think somebody else knew that the porthole arrangement was a means of identifying the ships, and not recently, but way back in 1912, because they made attempts to disguise that identification mark. They made this guys with the portals. They altered them now and again. Like I told you, they added extra on to make it from 14 to 16 on Titanic. And I'm going to show you where somebody have tampered with the evidence of this next photo coming up. Okay folks, we'll now take a look at the evidence for the other ship being Titanic. Now, it's definitely got the Titanic porthole pattern, 14 portholes and 8 to 9 large gap. However, what you can do, when you examine carefully the portholes around the 8 and 9 mark, it's obvious somebody been tampering with the evidence. They've smudged over the portholes with some images to hide the fact that 8 to 9 gap is larger, and hence Titanic. And what you can see with the blue and the yellow arrow on the left, the top blue arrow is pointing to the outside of the starboard side overhanging wheelhouse. Now that's a feature of Titanic. So despite somebody's attempt to disguise this side, this is Titanic, folks. Okay folks, what I'm going to show you here now is a small cropping of the last photo we just looked at, showing you the portholes around where should be 8 and 9 large gap. And you can distinctly see that somebody has tampered with the evidence by trying to cover up the portholes. Take a look at the cropping coming up. Okay folks, take a look at this close cropping here now. Now look at that area where you cannot see the portholes. Somebody have disguised it. They've put smudge marks over it for some reason. That's to stop you identifying the ship, which porthole arrangement it is. Is it 8 to 9 close, or is it 8 to 9 farther apart? Now, when somebody tampers with the evidence like that, then you know you are on the right track. Now folks, can I be any clearer than that? Did you see that attempt there to cover up the portholes around 8 to 9? Now, we got exactly the same with the fake Apollo moon landings. When somebody tampers with the evidence, you know you are on the right track. You know you are close to proving this conspiracy to be correct. Otherwise, there would be no need to tamper with any evidence, would there? Now folks, remember when I told you that critic C.M. Stevens is a liar by saying the porthole arrangements were the same on both ships? I'm proving him to be a complete liar. Now, where I've shown you unquestionable evidence about the porthole arrangement for the starboard side for Olympic while it's in New York, I'm now going to show you unquestionable evidence of the port side for Olympic. And you'll see it's exactly the same as the starboard for Olympic. Take a look at the next photo coming up. Now folks, one photo I found here, and it's the only one. This is going to prove that Guy Stevens is a liar when he states both ships had the same porthole arrangements. Here's the only one I could find with Olympic port side. And as you can see from the portholes arrangement, it's 15 portholes for Olympic and 8 to 9 gap small. No doubles at 12 and 14 area, definitely not Titanic, which had 2 added. And notice the no overhanging wheelhouse. Definitely not the ship that was scrapped at Jarrow, and definitely not the ship that served in World War I as a troop carrier, now asleep on the ocean floor bed. But after the switch, Titanic had 16 portholes because 2 extra were added. Now, watch for the photos coming up and remember that. Okay, take a look at this ship here now. What we've got here is additional portholes, i.e. doubles, as I call them. It has to be Titanic. Olympic never had extra portholes added. It never had these doubles. So this is Titanic, folks. Okay, folks, look at this Titanic here. The switch has now taken place. They put the name Olympic on this ship, but it is Titanic. Note the portholes. As I showed you, the gap between 8 and 9 is greater than the gap between 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. And at the right hand end, as you can see, it's got the doubles, the additional portholes, something that was never added to Olympic. So here's the first sign of them switching the ships. They've named Titanic with Olympic here. Okay, here's another fake, folks. Look at this ship here. It's not Titanic, it is Olympic, as I'm going to show you. This is Olympic with the name Titanic put on it. Let me give you some close-up views of it. Here you are, folks. I've cropped a section of that ship to give you all a closer look at it. As you can see, it's distinctly named Titanic, but is it Titanic? I'm going to prove to you it is not. This is after the switch, folks. Look at the next photo coming up. Here you are, folks, a close cropping of that ship that they claim is the Titanic, but it is not, as you can see. 15 portholes on Olympic, and it never changes. And as I've shown you on Olympic, counting the portholes from right to left, the gap between 8 and 9 is smaller than the gap between 7 and 8 or 9 and 10. It's a small gap. The portholes are close together, folks, in Olympic, and that never changes. That's what you've got here, is Olympic being passed off as Titanic, ready to take its maiden voyage. Oh, and may I add, not a maiden voyage to New York, but a maiden voyage to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, folks, look at this photo here. Now, this is a photo that they've got the name Olympic on it, but it's incorrect. It's not Olympic, it is Titanic. As I've shown you, look at the portholes, the gap between 8 and 9. When it's a bigger gap than either side, it's Titanic. This is Titanic, not Olympic. Well, folks, what's your opinion on what you've seen so far? Now, what I can tell you is the next few photos coming up for Titanic, I wouldn't say they are further evidence of the switch. What's coming up now, I would say, is ultimate proof of the switch. Cannot be denied. Ultimate proof. Take a look at the next few photos coming up. Okay, folks, here is the ship that carried on for another 25 years after the Titanic disaster. And it was claimed that this is Olympic, but I'm going to prove to you it is not. The ship that carried on for another 25 years was the Titanic, as you were going to see here and now. Now, one thing Titanic, or that so-called Olympic, done during the war was carried troops around. And it got disguised with all these different colours on it, as it's showing here. Now what we'll do, we'll take a closer look at this disguised ship. Here it is, folks. What is claimed to be the Olympic is actually the Titanic that sailed on for another 25 years. Here you are. What I'm showing you here is the top section is actually Titanic, the porthole arrangement. And as I showed you, 8 to 9 is a bigger gap than 7 to 8 or 9 to 10. And I've put that directly over the top of that other ship that's supposed to have carried troops, and resize them up and match them up. And you can see the portholes match perfect. You can even see the doubles on the top, and carefully you can see the doubles on the ship at the bottom. The ship at the bottom that served during the war is Titanic, folks, no question about it. Now folks, as I keep promising you, irrefutable, unquestionable evidence that they switched the ships. Let me say, before I put my card on the table and say, there you are, beat that, I want to show you some interesting photos of ships and see what you make of them. Look at the next photo coming up. Now folks, as the official story goes, after the so-called Titanic sailed and sank, Olympic, that was then supposed to have had a complete refit and repairs and go into service carrying troops throughout the war. Now look at this ship here. Notice all the lifeboats. It's got a full complement of lifeboats both sides. Titanic was supposed to have gone with only a small amount of lifeboats. But this one here, this ship here, has had a full refit and it's got a full complement of lifeboats. But what ship? Well, you look at the evidence, the porthole arrangement and the 8 to 9 gap is large. It is Titanic. And you can see the port side overhanging wheelhouse. This is definitely Titanic that's just had a refit and new lifeboats on both sides to go into service during the war, and more evidence coming up. Okay folks, we're now getting very, very close to the irrefutable evidence that the ships were switched. Take a look at this photo here. What do you think it is? This ship looks a mess, doesn't it? It looks well worn. Now if you plot into Google Titanic at the scrapyard or Olympic at the scrapyard, you will get this photo. Now the question is, which is it? Well, I'm going to show you which it is. It's Titanic, but it's not at the scrapyard. And the proof of that is, look at the bottom left hand corner near the bow of the ship, and you'll see what appears to be railway tracks. And another thing, look at the ship on the port side, you've got a boarding gantry. Now you wouldn't get a boarding gantry at a scrapyard. This is not at a scrapyard, it's at Harland & Wolff, Belfast. And what it's doing there is it's Titanic being decommissioned. They're removing many parts of this that will come in handy for future shipbuilding, like the lifeboats for a start. They've all been removed. Watch for the next photo coming up to prove this is not the scrapyard. Okay folks, look at this ship here now. Proof that that previous ship was not at a scrapyard. Look what you've got here. What we've got here is Olympic going through its final stages of fitting out. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? It hasn't been used, it hasn't even had the funnels fitted yet, it hasn't got any lifeboats. It looks beautiful. But look at the bottom left hand corner, and you've got those sort of rail tracks I just showed you in the previous photo where they claimed it was a scrapyard. Now another thing here is, as you can see, there's a crane lowering the funnels onto the ship. That's the crane they bought from Germany, and it's at Belfast, Harland & Wolff, not the scrapyard. And this ship here, you can tell it's Olympic, just been finally fitted out. It's got the Olympic portholes. 15 portholes, no doubles, and 8 to 9 small gap, as shown on other Olympic photos I've shown you. Okay, we're now into an hour of this video. I bet you're all waiting to see the trump card that proves once and for all that Titanic never sank. But before I show you that trump card, let's make it a bit more interesting by showing you two more chips to make it more convincing. Okay, look what we've got here, folks. We've got the Titanic here. It's got the usual Titanic markings. It's got the overhanging portside wheelhouse. It's got 16 portholes. It's showing the two doubles. Remember, as I showed you, initially it had 14 portholes on the slipway, but two more were added. And important is it's got a full complement of lifeboats all along the top, the port side and the starboard side. Now, it's a job to know whether this was a refit just after the so-called disaster, prior to it going into service in World War I, or it could be a refit after service in World War I, whereby it went through another refit to get it ready for future passenger services. But this is definitely Titanic, folks. Okay, let's get back to this one here, which I have shown you before. It's described as either Olympic or Titanic at the scrapyard. I proved to you it's not at the scrapyard. Okay? Now, this ship, which bears the name Titanic, has no lifeboats, 8 to 9 port gap, large. It is either Titanic getting a refit or Titanic being decommissioned prior to scrapping. The next photo will answer that question, folks. Okay, here's that ship again, and with proof of what's going on. The irrefutable evidence Titanic never sank. This is Titanic being decommissioned in 1937 at Harland and Wolff, Belfast. All the lifeboats have been removed. Now, you don't remove lifeboats if you were doing a refit. So this is where it came to the end of its life, and careful study of the bow below portholes 1 and 5, you can distinctly see the word Titanic. Now, that's most probably been covered up for a good many years with paint, but after about 25 years in service, that paint will have flaked away and it's revealing the inscribed name Titanic below the paint. There you are, folks, a clearer view. First letter T, second letter I, third letter T, fourth letter A, fifth letter N, sixth letter I, and last letter C. C is over porthole number 5. The final proof that Titanic never sank, it was switched with Olympic, and it is Olympic that's at the bottom of the ocean. So anyone buying any artifacts from Olympic, from the so-called Titanic at the bottom of the ocean, are actually buying fake items from Olympic. Now, folks, a ship I showed you earlier on, we're going to take a second look at it for more evidence. And remember what I said, when you find somebody deliberately lying, making up false photos, you know you're onto the truth. Now let's take a closer look at this photo here that I showed you before, that's got the name Titanic on it. 1937, and the name Titanic was on it. We'll take another look at it. Here it is, folks. Here's that ship, claimed to be, in some reports, Titanic, being broken up in 1937, and others claiming it to be Olympic, broken up in 1937. We're going to take a closer look at this ship. Now, folks, remember what I said earlier on regarding that ship being broken up or supposed to be at the scrapyard in 1937. Now, earlier on in the video, I proved to you all it's not at the scrapyard. It's Harland and Wolff, Belfast. I proved that to you. Go back and check. Now, one thing to notice about that ship is there's no lifeboats on it. I concluded that that is not at the scrapyard, and they wouldn't want wooden lifeboats at the scrapyard. They're quite handy for the shipping company, for the shipbuilders, for future ships. No lifeboats, wooden lifeboats. But what I got from another YouTuber who's got a channel saying the switch is debunked, he came up with a pack of lies. When I said to him, what have you got to say about the name Titanic being on that ship in 1937? And you know what he came up with? He came up with a pack of lies. He said that's not Titanic being broken up. That is Titanic prior to the journey being finally fitted out. Now, all of you take a good look at that photo. I'll bring it back up. And you can see the man is lying through his teeth. One, look at the ship. It's a mess. It's well worn. It's not new. That's one thing. Next thing, it's got all the features of Titanic, the portholes, the overhanging wheelhouse, and the name on the bow. And most important, now according to that other YouTuber, it's Titanic new, just being fully fitted out with the lifeboats to go on. But look at the anchor chain coming down on the bow. Now what happens with an anchor chain? When it's out in the sea, the waves flick it back and forth, it bangs against the side of the ship, it knocks the paint off, it exposes bare metal, and bare metal on the sea will rust. Look at the rust mark for the anchor chain coming down. Now, Titanic, just being completed and fully fitted out, would not have any anchor chain markings on the bow. But this one has. The man is a liar. It's well worn. It's Titanic being decommissioned at Harland and Wolff, ready to go to the scrapyard. And more evidence coming up to confirm that. Okay, here's that ship again. Well worn, look at it. It's really gone through a few battles, hasn't it? 1937, and it's the one that shows the name Titanic on the bow. Now let's take a closer look at the anchor chain, shall we? Here you are, folks. Here's proof that another author of a debunking video is a liar, a blatant liar, stating that this name Titanic is only on this ship because it's just being initially fitted out. It's well worn, as you can see. Look at the anchor chain and look at the rust from the anchor chain. Rust here, rust there, rust everywhere. This is well worn and it's 1937. Here you are, folks. Here's a comment by another author of another video who claims he can debunk the switch theory. His ID is anonymous. His reply to me when I showed him that photo of that weathered old ship having the name Titanic on the bow. Seriously? How many times? The ship is still incomplete and awaiting its last few additions, such as the partial closure of a deck and a final coat of paint. After this has been applied, the name would be painted in white or yellow over the engraved area. See, folks, that liar there, his explanations for the name on the ship and the rust is to say that it's not completed, which is a load of lies. Titanic and Olympic were both painted before they were launched off the slipway. That's not having another coat of paint at all, and he's ignoring the fact that the photo was taken in 1937. The man is a liar. Okay, folks, my next piece of evidence, irrefutable, is going to prove to you all that Titanic is not at the bottom of the sea. The ship that was sunk was Olympic, and you're going to see it. Take a look at the next photo coming up. This photo coming up is supposed to be Titanic leaving Southampton on its maiden voyage. Now, if you look at the ship and you are observant, you will find out and see that that's nothing but a pack of lies. Take a look at this ship coming up and tell me what you see wrong with it. Okay folks, take a look at this ship here now. This ship, as you can see from the script at the bottom, it's supposed to be Titanic departing Southampton April 10th, 1912. Now, study this ship. There's something staring you in the face. Come on, wake up. Something really staring you in the face to tell you this is not Titanic on its maiden voyage. Now I can spot 7 errors on this photo that proves it's fake because it is Olympic, not Titanic. And I'll go through them clues one by one so you can understand them easy. But study it, look at it, wind the video back, stop the video, study this photo, see if you can find what's wrong with it. Well, what about it, folks? How many of you spotted anything suspicious about that photo? It's staring you in the face. I could see what we could call anomalies, but actually they are not. They're deliberate evidence of fakery. 8 pieces. Now folks, where I'll go through each of these pieces of evidence of fakery, step by step, let me ask all of you, did you spot one of the main clues staring you in the face? Bang, it should smack you in the head. Come on, open up your eyes. Can't you see it? Take a look at that photo again, and apart from about 6 or 8 crew members on board, there's not a single passenger anywhere. Now, did it sail on its maiden voyage empty? Where's the passengers? That's one thing. The next thing is, it's not moving. Look at the anchor chain, it is down. That ship is anchored. What looks like waves at the bottom of the front of the bow to make it look as if it's sailing, they are fake. Those white waves are what we call sea horses, where water tips over and the falling water becomes white, and we call it white horses. White horses, we call it. They are fake there. The ship is not moving while it's anchored. That's another thing. And there are other clues on it. I'll show you as we go along now. Okay folks, we'll go through this carefully, step by step. Let's start off with the bottom right hand corner of this photo here. Notice the red arrow pointing to the left. Now it's pointing to a square hole. That hole is only on Olympic. I would imagine that's to allow any splash water gone into that underdeck to escape via that hole. That's the first thing. That is only on Olympic. Now, the next thing to notice, folks, look at the blue arrow up around about 2 o'clock. It's pointing to a red vertical arrow line which shows the side of the ship and the side of the wheelhouse above. They are in line. There is no overhang of the wheelhouse. I showed you that earlier on in the video. In the video for Titanic, the wheelhouse overhangs. It does not do so here, so this is Olympic. Okay folks, now look at the section where I've boxed it in with green arrows. You examine that carefully and you'll find that's exactly the same as what's on the wreck at the bottom of the ocean. Look at the bottom unevenly spaced windows. Counting them windows from right to left, you can go 1 gap, 1, 2 gap, 11112. Now that is exactly the same as what's on the wreck at the bottom of the ocean. I'll give you a view of that now. Now folks, for my final piece of evidence, we're going to take another look at that ship that's supposed to be leaving Southampton, and I'm going to show you a very, very important clue which reveals that there is fakery going on. Somebody is altering the facts of the case. Somebody is trying to prove that the switch never took place. Let's look at that photo again, and I'll show you a piece more evidence that it is fake. Here you are folks, here's that ship claimed to be Titanic on its maiden voyage leaving Southampton. But as I've proven, it's not Titanic, it is Olympic. We're going to take another look at a close section of the bow of this ship. Something very surprising. Here you are folks, a close cropping of that bow of that ship, and as you can distinctly see the name Titanic on it. And here you are folks, a clearer view of it. Okay folks, let me say, at this point I had finished this video. This was going to be the end of the video. Yesterday I finished it. It was exported and ready to upload to YouTube. But I know some of you have been waiting patiently. Where's this new evidence I've got? What I can tell you is last night I made 2 more discoveries. Vital information that the ships were swapped. And what I'm going to do now, I decided to cut the video here, part it and insert this new evidence for you all to get a look of it. 2 more photos of Titanic with the name Titanic on the bow, and plenty of evidence to prove that it is Titanic and not Olympic. Take a look at the next photo coming up. Okay folks, take a look at this ship here now. As you can see, on the front of the ship, on the bow, the name Titanic. Now this is Titanic, and it's in the initial stage of completion after launching. Here's the points I've shown you earlier in the video. Pay particular attention to the porthole arrangements. 14 portholes, and the gap between 8 and 9, now we're counting from the left to right, the gap between 8 and 9 is the largest. Okay, now that is a feature of Titanic. No doubles at this point, right? We're at the stage where they haven't doubled up any of the portholes. 14 portholes it was initially made with. Now, and you can see the name Titanic on the bow. Look at the top deck. Look at the A deck. It's open all the way along. Now, let's take a look at this ship in a slightly advanced state of development. Let's take a look at it again. Okay folks, here's that ship again. As you can see, the name on the bow, Titanic. It's in this next stage of development now. The most important thing to notice is, look at the porthole arrangement. It has changed. It is now 16. 2 extra portholes have been added to it, now making 16. It now has doubles. You can see the doubles above the word arrangements. Now, what do you think that means? That means, as far as I'm concerned, the story about the double portholes is fabrication. Now, I don't suppose any of you know why there's doubles, but I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. Let's look at the next important thing. What you've got here, proving again it's Titanic, look at the red vertical arrows. You've got the port side wheelhouse overhanging the side of the ship. That is a characteristic of Titanic. That didn't happen with Olympic. Next thing, look at A-deck windows. They've been added. It was open just now, all the way. Windows have been added to A-deck. And below that, very, very important, B-deck windows, evenly spaced. Now I've shown you the wreck at the bottom of the ocean. Olympic didn't have evenly spaced windows there. They had the 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. Olympic did not have evenly spaced windows there, but the wreck at the bottom of the ocean has got the uneven space. Now folks, as far as the doubles are concerned with the portholes, extra portholes, as I said earlier in the video, I'm not convinced with the initial reason for those extra portholes. As it said at the time, the deckhands, they are portholes for the deckhand cabins, and they said the deckhands were moaning that there wasn't enough light getting in the cabins. To which I said earlier on in the video, what about in the night after dark? They must have had an interior light. Another question to ask is, what about the starboard side? Why no doubles on the starboard side? And another question, why no doubles on Olympic? Why no doubles on the port side or the starboard side on Olympic? Why wasn't they complaining about lack of light? No folks, I don't swallow the story that they're to give extra light. I am convinced they are the start of features to disguise the ship. There you are folks, you can now see the reason for the delay in the uploading of this video. 2 photos showing Titanic at different stages of development and displaying Titanic features to enable you to instantly recognize Titanic in the future and not get it mixed up with Olympic, and showing on both occasions the name Titanic etched into the bow. So folks, what you've seen now is the ship that carried on for another 25 years, served in the war, had another refit, carried passengers again, and went to the scrapyard, have all got Titanic features. 16 portals, 2 doubles, overhanging wheelhouse, and the name Titanic on the bow. Anyone who believes the ships were not switched needs to book a meeting with the guy with a white coat. So folks, what we've got now is 2 ships with considerable differences to prove they're not the same, but they both got the same name. We've got the one from 1937, about to be dismantled, bearing the name Titanic, and we've got this other one here, supposed to be Titanic on its maiden voyage, bearing the name Titanic. Now, do you want more evidence of fakery than that? Oh, one thing I forgot. Just remember, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It helps my channel a lot. It's back to a new channel after I had my initial channel taken down. Okay folks, there's the end of the video. Let's have some comments on it. How many of you now have changed your mind from thinking that it was Titanic at the bottom of the ocean to now realizing that it is Olympic at the bottom of the ocean? Now, one question I've seen asked by many quite a few times. If Olympic was such a good ship, why wasn't it preserved as a museum or preserved like the Queen Mary? Well, the answer to that is pretty obvious. The ones that carried out this despicable act knew while that ship was on the planet, in one piece, there's always a chance of somebody finding out that it was switched. Certain clues on the ship would tell them, hey, this is not the ship we was told it is. That's why they decided they had to get rid of every inch of it off the planet, so there could be no comebacks. Now, let me know in the comments how many of you have now changed your mind on what you initially believed. Let's hope you enjoy the video. Keep the comments sensible. And I hope you enjoy it, and there'll be more videos coming up in the future.